All right, everybody. UFC 303 is in the books. What a ride it was. So let's speak to a man who was cage side on the broadcast, in the corner, sometimes doing both things at the exact same time. Dean Thomas is here just after UFC 303. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. It's still coming down, trying to calm myself down after a very exciting, stressful weekend for me, but it was still exciting and well worth the stress.
Good. It's good to hear. How did you enjoy just the International Fight Week experience, Dean? It seems like it's a little bit different every year. They try to do a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. It was slated as the return of Conor McGregor originally. That was going to be the capstone of this all. And then everything just kind of got lit on fire and changed into a whole different thing. But you were a very busy man in Las Vegas. Were you buzzing? Was it buzzing?
Yeah, Las Vegas was buzzing. Let me first start with Conor McGregor. The sport, I don't want to say the sport needs Conor McGregor. The sport is better with Conor McGregor. There's no doubt about that because he just brings added value and extra attention to the sport. But without Conor McGregor, the sport is still just fine. The sport still moves along. We still do our thing. It's still growing. It doesn't matter. And it was proven this weekend. Now, as soon as I got to the hotel, the very first thing I saw when I walked into my hotel room, the little pamphlet that's on in every Vegas hotel room is a picture of Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, the fight of the year, and that fight didn't happen. But it doesn't matter because the UFC was still able to pull the strings that it needed in order to make a good International Fight Week and a good card as well. Now, the International Fight Week, I'm not a fan of the week itself, and that's only because the heat. It's 115 degrees in Vegas. The heat is absolutely unbearable. But besides that, I went to the UFC X. I was there Friday. I was there Saturday, and it was bigger than ever. I'm talking about so when I got there Friday, I saw a line outside. So I'm assuming that they didn't let people in yet. But yes, the line went from inside to outside. It was so many people there. And when they were letting people in, they were rushing to get to the little destinations they wanted to get to. It was an amazing week. It was bigger than ever. And like I said, the sport might be better with Conor, but without Conor, we just fine. We still making moves.
It was real. I'm glad you said that because this is one of those things where we started to hear the rumors and rumblings about this fight not happening, and then the UFC trying to scramble and put some things together. And boy, did they! Because we get Pereira versus Jiri, we get what was supposed to be Lopez versus Ortega became a totally different fight, which we're obviously going to talk about. They added Anthony Smith versus Carlos Ulberg. That became a whole different fight as well. But I think after maybe 4 or 5 days after Dana announced the lineup change, I think everybody was sort of in unison. That's like, yeah, the aura of a Conor card is obviously different than what we're getting. But if you're just a fan of the sport and have been watching it for a long time, I actually think we're getting a better card than we were going to get with the Conor Chandler card. Did you kind of feel the same way, or did you feel just should have one hand wash the other?
Yeah, no doubt about that it was a better card at the end of the whole thing. And that's really because when Conor fights, he doesn't allow other superstars on his card. He won't allow other big names. So, this is what we get, right? But now without Conor, the UFC was able to pull those strings and make it happen. We got better fights, more action. And I don't think it would have been able to happen if it wasn't for what Alex Pereira did at UFC 300. Because when he got announced as the main event at UFC 300, everybody said, oh, no, he can't do it. He's not a big enough star. But that event blew us all away with the help of Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje. But to cap it off, what Alex Pereira did to Jamal Hill blew us away. So when he got announced as the main event here, everybody said, okay, I'm here for it. Now, if he didn't do what he did at 300, we would have said, oh, no. But he did what he did. He came out here at 303 and did what he did. And now, to me, he might be the face of the UFC. And that's without ever speaking a word of English.
How do you describe this man, Dean Thomas? Because he comes in, we know what the UFC is trying to do, right? This is a very smart thing. We're trying to build the story back to Israel Adesanya. And the matchmakers did an absolutely perfect job getting him to the first Israel Adesanya fight. They have this rivalry, and then he goes up to 205 and continues to just have this massive success, wins the second belt, defends it twice with 2 brutal knockouts. Right now, if the year ended, he's the fighter of the year. He might have the knockout of the year. I don't know if he beats Holloway, but he's definitely in the conversation. The man, as you said, doesn't really speak English. He's a freaking unicorn, Dean Thomas. This man is a unicorn. I've never seen anything like it. You've been around the sport longer than I have. Have you ever seen anything quite like this?
No, and in order to be good in this sport and to be relevant in this sport, a lot has to happen at the same time. And I consider it luck, really. It really is just kind of luck. To be a good fighter, just a good fighter, not a superstar, but just be a good fighter, to have the skill set to beat people. A lot of things have to happen for you. Like, you have to have the right training, you have to have the right fights, and you can't have a lot of injuries. A lot of things have to happen together, working together, to make you a good fighter. Now, to be a superstar, a lot of things have to happen for you. For them to culminate together like it did for Alex in this short amount of time is unreal. I mean, we talk about these supernatural powers. I almost have to think that it was like supernatural powers. I remember when the last time I seen something like this was BJ Penn. BJ Penn came out, he beat Joey Gilbert. Then he knocked me out. Then he fought Kyle Uno and knocked Kyle Uno out. And this was a time we were the best lightweights in the world. He was just knocking us out. And I said, man, this man must be possessed. And now I'm saying the same thing about Alex Pereira. In order to do what he's doing, because I've seen so many good guys come and go, and we can't say, oh, well, no, kickboxing, because there's been plenty of really good kickboxers to come into the UFC, but none come into the UFC with the determination that this man has, the focus that this man has, the cheat code in Glover Teixeira. He moved to Danbury, Connecticut to live and be under the guidance under Glover Teixeira, who had the cheat code that he got from the Chuck Liddell, John Hackelman system. And all these things culminated together to make this superstar that we got. And without even speaking English, he's enough. Like, it's enough of what he's doing, from the walkout to the knockouts. I mean, it is absolutely outstanding. And we are lucky to be alive in a time of Alex Pereira.
Yeah, his relationship with Plino, they're just so fun. Like, the fight's about to happen. He's 2.5 hours away from stepping back into the octagon with an absolute lunatic in Jiri Prochazka, a man who, had kind of a blueprint. He looked real good in that first fight until the fight ended. And Pereira's just back there dancing like he's a member of the freaking Temptations back there. It was unbelievable. Like, he's so calm, cool, and collected. And what really stands out to me about him is that in this world where fighters have to talk trash and get on social media and post a bunch of stuff to get on people's nerves, Alex Pereira does the exact opposite. He says nothing, even through a translator. It's just, hey, Alex, Jamal Hill said that he's coming for you. And his answer was, okay. Like, that's literally all he does, and people love it.
Well, you know what it is, man? And again, there's no real ingredients to success for MMA or anything really, for any type of entertainment where it relies on a fan base. There's no real ingredient that really works for everybody. It's everybody's ingredient is different. Conor, he needed what he needed to do in order to become who he was. Sean O'Malley needed to do what he needed to do in order to become who he is. And for Alex, he's doing exactly, because if Alex were to come out and start talking trash, I don't think the fans would like it now. We'd be like, that's not our guy. Our guy was a silent killer. We like the silent killer. And that's what fighters have to understand. It's happening right now with Payton Talbott. And if he gets a few more knockouts the way he's doing it, he's not going to ever have to say a word neither. Because sometimes when you play the role wrong, what Gary Machado is doing, I mean, he's guaranteed he's getting his fans. Let's make no mistake about that. But I've never seen a fighter go from so high on the A side to the bottom of the B side like Gary Machado did. And that's because we don't believe him and we don't trust him, because he tried to do the Conor thing, and that's not truly who he is. And we can see right through that. But when these fighters are themselves and they embrace it and they deliver the type of violence that the fans want to see, we got a superstar in the making.
He actually leveled up between the Jamal Hill fight and this Jiri Prochazka rematch. Not to mention, he had 2 broken toes. He took this fight on 2.5 weeks' notice, and he looked better than ever on Saturday, Dean. It blew me away.
He did. And again, I attribute that to, when the big question was, how does he deal with wrestlers, right? We said, how does he deal with wrestlers? And when he came out 2 years ago, I don't think he would have did very well. Again, this is a product of just great timing. Because if maybe there was some wrestlers, maybe if he fought Ankalaev 2 years ago, he wouldn't have went on his trajectory. But he didn't have to face any wrestlers on his way up. And during that 2 years, he spends with Glover Teixeira in the gym getting one-on-one privates with one of the best 205 grapplers to ever exist. So now, give him 2 years of this, he's like, yo, where are the wrestlers at? I can deal with it. And he can lie about it and say that he's always been able to, but us on the inside, we pretty much know the truth. Like, you developed into this and you leveled up into this. Like, his growth has been exponential over the last 2 years, and you attribute that to his focus. Like, he is a very focused individual. I was speaking to Glover Teixeira at the Performance Institute, and he was telling me about the focus of Alex, and said that, if you put your finger in his face and said, just stare at this until I say stop, he'll do it. Like, he'll stare at it until you say stop. And you know that about him just watching his fights, like him focusing in on Jamal Hill when he fought him. And then obviously the stare down between him and Yuri in this fight. I mean, this guy won't lose a blinking contest. Like, that's one of the assets about him that makes him so good, because being good is also in that target zone of his focus.
I feel like every time I see that he's about to turn 37, I just don't believe it. The way his game continues to evolve, where he's at in the sport in such a short amount of time. And I know he's got the kickboxing accolades and everything, but he's doing, like, he has sped run a Hall of Fame career in like 8 UFC fights. This is silly, Dean. This whole thing is ridiculous. I saw Danny Rubenstein, manager to the Stars, tweet this out the other day, and I don't hate this idea at all. Next year's Hall of Fame, they should just put Alex Pereira in there as the active fighter, because he's in no matter what. He's already in. Let's just do something different and fun with him.
Yeah, no doubt about that, man. What he's been able to do in these last couple of years has just been crazy. And to think, and it's really, in a way, I don't like it. I love it. I love it. Don't get me wrong here. Let me explain this. I love it. But from a guy who comes from, the trenches of the gyms and, of MMA, I've been around for a long time. Everybody that I've ever met that wanted to be a fighter wanted to have this career. And we would always go, it's impossible. No one is going to have a career like this. And Alex did it. Alex did. Like, if Alex walked into my gym 2 years ago and said he wanted to be a fighter, he was going to be the greatest fighter in the world, I'd be like, man, whatever, get in class. But he did it. So that's why as a coach and as someone on the other side of the game, I try not to rain on people's parade. When they say, oh, I'm going to be a world champion, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Nowadays, I'm just like, show me. Because when you see what Alex did, that things are possible. Things that don't seem possible are possible, because what he's doing is damn near impossible.
Now he's got a decision to make, because he's got so much going for him. He's in such high regard with the promotion. And let's be honest, this doesn't happen all that often. The promotion owes him a couple of little favors right now, Dean Thomas. He's in such a good place with the UFC. If he wants to fight Ankalaev, he can go fight Ankalaev. If he wants to go fight someone else 2-5, he can probably do that. If he wants to move up and go for a third belt or just have a fun fight at heavyweight, he could do that too. So you take the analyst hat on, take the coach's hat off. You're going to wear the manager hat right now. The UFC called you, Dean Thomas. You're the manager of Alex Pereira. And they say, what does your guy want to do? What do you want to see for him if you had to choose? What do you want to see next for Alex Pereira?
If I'm Alex Pereira or his manager, I'm going up to heavyweight and fighting Jon Jones right now. Jon will decline.
You think so?
Yes. Jon will decline. But I would say I would be like, I challenge Jon Jones. He declined. Let the record show that man declined. That's what I would say. Or if he accepted, take the fight. What does he have to lose to fight the greatest of all time, other than to become the greatest of all time? He has nothing to lose. If I'm Alex and I'm the manager, I'm going up to heavyweight and fighting Jon Jones right now. Why risk an Ankalaev fight? Just go up and fight Jon Jones.
I love that idea. I want to see it. I know Jon wants to fight Stipe, and I know the UFC really wants to see that fight. But for some reason they announced this fight and then a month later Stipe can't go. Alex Pereira has to be the first call, right? Because I don't think Jon's going to take Tom on Aspinall or Curtis Blades, depending on who wins at 304 that quickly. But I think with Pereira, he might, because that's a massive fight right now.
He might, because he still might have his doubts on Pereira's grappling. So I think Jon is more willing to take the Pereira fight than he is the Tom Aspinall fight.
Yeah.
Because he might still see a path to victory against Pereira because he's not the greatest grappler.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. I'm very fascinated by this entire situation, but I was also very fascinated about what was going on in regards to the co-main event on Saturday, because we're getting ready to start our watch party and the rumblings start to begin. Brian Ortega not fighting. Diego Lopes still might fight on Saturday. And then we start to see the tweets. Danny Gay, Jason House, Ali Abdelaziz, Eric Nixick. They're all tweeting. They're all tweeting the same thing. And then we find out on the broadcast, and this is brilliant, by the way, how the UFC announced this. They showed Diego coming in, and then they just flash Danny Gay on the screen as he pimps his way into the arena, and the people go crazy, and everyone's going nuts. Fight's going to happen at 165. You see both guys weighing in. We even see Jeff Mullins talking to Megan O'Leary, which you never see anybody from the commission do anything from a public perspective like that. I thought the whole thing was really well done. How did you find out about this, that Danny was going to step in?
Yeah, I actually found out from my producer on Sirius XM, Kelly Murphy. If you ever see me at the UFC, even when I'm working, I'm always like texting my friends and clowning around. But Kelly Murphy sends me a text. She said, "Is Danny Gay fighting?" And I was like, "What are you talking?" Like it didn't even dawn on me that was an option because I hadn't been on Twitter. I don't go on Twitter. So when she told me this, I was like, "What?" I was like, "No." I was like, they're just talking trash. And then she was sending me screenshots of some of the tweets, and I was like, man, I've never seen anything like this happen before. And the next thing I know, boom, they announced it. And I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. And then I text messaged Eric Nixick, and yeah, just the whole thing was it was the way that came together was actually beautiful, man. I was proud of everybody involved to be able to put that together.
I couldn't, I just didn't think it was realistic. I really didn't. And then somehow Eric was just on the MMA Hour, and I guess Jeff Mullins called him on the telephone and said, "Hey, can Dan fight tonight?" And Eric basically said, "Look, man, this guy's like my son. I would never put him in a position where he would get hurt." And apparently the way Eric described it to Jeff signed off on it, but that wasn't enough. They still had to weigh in and all of that and sign the contract. Eric said that they had to go to the governor of Nevada in order for this to get approved, which is crazy. And yet somehow it all came to happen, which is wild. This is such a wild scene, dude. Outside of the regional scene, have you ever seen anything like this from a major MMA organization?
No. I mean, this is just crazy. This is absolute. That was bananas to be, especially at the magnitude in which they did it at on International Fight Week with hours to go. It was crazy to witness, just to watch how it all came together and then hear some of the stories about how it came together. And I'm just thinking, and then the performance from both guys, especially the performance was for both guys. I mean, we don't even think about the perspective of Diego, his perspective, he's weighing in and thinking he's going to fight, not fighting. And he's just like, man, and he still accepts the fight and comes out on fire. I mean, from both guys, both guys really stepped up to the plate and just showed what they're made of. And that's something that we don't really get to see from a lot of MMA guys today that are worth it, right? Because you could probably find some MMA guys on the local scene or some MMA guys that, you could find some power slap guys that'll just come out the crowd and fight somebody. Yeah, anybody could do that. But when you're as good as these guys are with so much on the line, so much at stake, you don't see that. When you have so much to lose, you don't see that. And these guys stepped up and let us know what they're made of. And I couldn't be more proud of MMA than I was on Saturday night.
Well said. Well said. Tough night for Anthony Smith against Roman Dolidze is a good win. Roman stepping in up a weight class on super short notice, gets a win. He's going to be by Tuesday. Whenever this comes out, he's going to be ranked in 2 weight classes. Macy Chiasson just cuts open Mayra Bueno Silva pretty nastily in the second fight of the main card, gets a huge win. She probably has a big fight ahead of her. But you mentioned Ian Machado Garry earlier on, so I wanted to get your take on the performance because It is, as you know, it is almost impossible to look good against Michael Venom Page, win or lose. It's impossible. Even when Douglas Lima knocked him out in Bellator, MVP looked real good in that fight until he didn't. It was just the way he stood up. He just got ethered. But even the loss of Logan Storley, like Logan didn't look great in that fight. And a lot of people thought that MVP actually won that fight despite not getting it on the card. So Ian Machado Garry goes in there, wins a unanimous decision 29-28. That's how I scored it. Dana White thought it was a draw. I kind of get that because round 3 was super duper even. It was really, really close. How do you grade Ian Machado Garry's performance? Because again, all things considered, very difficult to look good against that man.
No, you know what? He could have looked good against that man because he had him in some spots that a really good fighter would have finished him. So the one thing that going into this fight, in fact, Greg Jones, coach of Killcliff, asked me, man, what's the biggest thing you're looking forward to on Saturday? Something that you want to learn? I said, honestly, what I want to learn is how good Ian Garry is. And I think I found out he's not as good as he thinks he is, because a good fighter would have gotten Michael Venom Page out of there if he had him in those spots that Ian did. Like, he had a full-on choke and couldn't finish. He had leg lock attempts and couldn't finish. Like, really good fighters finish those spots. So going into this fight, I'm thinking, all right, we're going to find out how good Ian is. He's good. He's a really good fighter, but he's not the fighter that he says he is. And the only reason why it may sound bad is because he says he has the highest IQ in all of MMA. He says he's the best fighter in all of MMA, and he's not. He's not, because a really good fighter would have finished those spots. If Aljamain Sterling had that choke in on Michael Venom Page, he's finishing. And it's not a knock on Ian, because I still think he's good. He's just not as good as he thinks he is.
He's 8-0 in the UFC. I think Kamaru Usman is like the only other fighter in the division's history to start off their UFC run at 8-0. So it ain't the prettiest. I mean, he beat Neil Magny up pretty badly. Jeff Neal fight was really, really close. And then this one was really, really close. Now he's calling for Shavkat Rakhmonov right now. And I think how most of the hardcore fan base views Shavkat Rakhmonov. A lot of people feel like he's the welterweight champion in waiting. He just needs to go fight for the belt. Do you like that matchup? Do you still view Ian in the same way, where maybe you looked at him after like 5 or 6 fights, like, this dude's definitely fighting for a belt. This dude's definitely going to be a world champion. But I've seen other people who had those thoughts 4 or 5 fights into his UFC run saying like, yeah, he might be a top 5 guy, but I don't know if he's going to win the belt. Well,
you know what? I mean, it's hard to say that because he could still get better. Right. What I'm judging him on is his performance Saturday night. But he might go into the gym on Monday and fix those issues, and then it won't be a problem no more. So he has potential. Like, he has the potential to be as good as he says he is, or as good as he wants to be. He's just not there yet. So him fighting Shavkat is another step. It's another good test for him. If he can get past Shavkat, then I think the sky really might be the limit for him. But if he doesn't, then it's proof that he's just not where he wants to be right now. In fact, like, he's 1 decision away from not being where he needs to be, like 2 decisions away. Like, Jeff Neal had that went the other way. Had this went the other way against MVP, he wouldn't even have a case. Like, only because he got his hand raised in a fight that most people thought was a draw or he could have lost, he wouldn't even have a case right now. So he's really like playing with fire here with his words.
Yeah. Do you like the Shavkat matchup for him? Or
yeah, I do. I think, and it makes a lot of sense too. I think it makes sense. Not a lot of people want to fight Shavkat, so I think this fight makes sense.
I love that. Just sign me up for it. I'm ready. A couple last things before they go. You mentioned Payton Talbott. This guy's an absolute monster. I wasn't sure how good he was because he was on the Contender Series, and I know everyone was absolutely blown away by him. He's got a little personality. He's got a little swagger in there. The win was very impressive, and then he gets the debut win, gets the finish, and everyone's really excited for him. And then he gets the Cameron Simon matchup. And my first thought when they matched him up with Cameron Simon was, I think this is a little too quick. Like, I think he's got something, but this might be a little bit too quick. And boy, was I wrong, because he just blasted out Cameron Simon until he eventually finished. And then he gets a 19-second finish on Saturday, International Fight Week, in a fight that woke up the crowd. Really, they needed a spark, and he provided it for them. He's got something pretty darn special, Dean Thomas. He's only 25 years old.
Yeah, he's definitely one of them guys that has something special. But again, eventually MMA levels out for you. You know, like these, eventually it comes back around and the real truth is told. He's had a lot of great success, partially because he's a good fighter. He does his work in the gym, and partially it, and this sounds bad, but I mean, there are some luck elements to it, right? There are some luck elements. Like but make no mistake, he can be a star. Make no mistake about that. I'm really high on him. I really think he's going to be really super good. But it's going to level out a little bit, right? You know, it could even happen. You know, he called out Adrian Yanez. Like if they make that fight happen, that could be the fight that he goes, damn, this game is tougher than I thought. You know, it happens. It happens to us all. Like you know, Jamal Hill was on the show talking to us. We interviewed him a couple weeks ago or last week on International Fight Week, and he said there was a time where he thought he was never going to lose. Like he thought he was going to be undefeated. Like fighting to him was too easy. Beating people up was too easy until it wasn't. And now look at him, right? Like it comes back around to where you realize that, whoa, like those guys are me just at a different gym. Or yeah, those guys are me just at a different gym. They just didn't have the luck that I had in my three fights, you know. So it comes back around. It's going to hit him eventually to where he you know has his hands full.
Jillian Robertson, you were in the corner. You were on the broadcast while walking her to the octagon, which I got a big kick out of it. That was great. She looked incredible on Saturday. I actually thought the betting lines, I actually thought she was favored the right way, but I thought the betting lines were a little off because I thought Michelle, you know, was a pretty darn good grappler. And I thought if it stayed on the feet, like Michelle had a good solid advantage there, even though Jillian continues to evolve. But man, once Jillian gets you down, she is a friggin' pit bull, man. She just doesn't let you breathe. And she just started barraging Michelle over and over and over again for 3 rounds. I thought she got a 10-8 in the first for sure. And then just the outpour just kept going and going and going. And she's starting to get better and better, man. So what was that like for you? Just, you know, 1, you're a part of the broadcast team. 2, you're in the corner. And 3, you're watching Jillian Robertson fight somebody, probably the biggest name she's competed against thus far.
Yeah, you know, well, first I'll address being on the broadcast and trying to make all that happen. Is it, you know, this game is based on high stakes, high pressure, and the more pressure you can give me, the more I want to be involved, because that's what makes success with these guys. Like all these guys that have become big names have done things that just haven't been done before. So when they ask me if I want to do these things, I'm like, just put more on my plate. I'll handle it. Right. I mean, think about that's why the UFC is where it is today, just taking high bets. And so they asked me to do it. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's add some flavor to the broadcast. But the fight in itself, I mean, we prepared very diligently for this fight. I mean, we broke her down. We broke Michelle down. And I hate to toot my own horn on this, but this is something I've always believed. When it comes to jiu-jitsu for MMA, I think I'm the best in the world at it in terms of how it's done. And, you know, I started working with Sean Brady for the Kelvin Gastelum fight. We saw how that went. I just don't think that when it comes to grappling for MMA, that there's nobody on the planet who understands it like I do in terms of dealing with strikes and putting strikes together with submissions. So, yeah, and I'm willing to put that bet against anybody. You know, I'm willing to bet against anybody in terms of, you know, give me my athletes and let them work with me, and you can take your athletes and do your jiu-jitsu, and let's see who comes out on top. I'm willing to take those chances.
Yeah, what a performance from her. And then you got to coach against Michelle Waterson for the final fight of her career. And then the UFC played her a video and thought it was really well done. What does that mean to you? Michelle's been around a long time. She had quite the career, up a weight class. She probably was an atom weight and would have been her entire fighting career, and still found her way to have a pretty fruitful UFC career.
Yeah, Michelle's an inspiration. You know, she's a role model. She's never done anything to jeopardize her integrity as a female MMA fighter. And she's always held herself in the highest regard, always with class. And she's a great fighter too. Let's make no mistake about that. She's always been game in every fight. Um, that's why this was kind of important for us, because we had a feeling that she was going out, and I was like, we can't let her go out with a win, though. You know, this game is based on stars, and the old eat the young. The young eat the old. I'm sorry. RJ Clifford always says this. RJ Clifford always says the young eat the old. And I said, we gotta eat. You gotta, if she's gonna go out, you gotta get what she has. So we wanted to make sure that we just did all the work. And Jillian is an absolute cyborg in terms of working. Like, she's extremely disciplined and extremely regimented, and she won't miss a practice. It'll upset her to miss a practice. It'll upset her to have a bad practice. It'll upset her to miss a practice. It'll upset her if something doesn't go right in practice. So, like, she's an absolute just OCD about training, and she does her work, and she's ready to move on to the next.
You feel like this is the official sort of level up for her at this point? Because when she dropped to 15 and had her first fight at 15, we were like, damn, she's a beast. She's a savage. She might fight for a belt sometime. And then the Tabitha Ricci fight happens, and it kind of slows down a little bit. But boy, she has bounced back in a big way. Joe Rogan kept saying she looks way more vicious now than she has in her previous fights. Like, there's just a difference to her.
For sure. And part, like, part of the reason why was, and she talked about this, was that she didn't take control of her career. She was just going, I'll do it, whatever. And I would always like, well, what do you want to do? And she'd be like, I don't know, you tell me. And then now she's like telling me what she wants. And I go, let's do it. What do you want? Okay, if that's what's going to give you the confidence to go out there and perform, let's do that. Don't do what I want to do, because I don't want to do honestly, I don't want to be here. Like, it's not for me. This is for you. And she moved down to Miami to train full time at the Goat Shed, and which is great for her. There's a lot of small little bodies in there, a lot of little roughnecks that she can hang out with, and little rough dudes from the streets that she can kind of absorb that aggression from. And because she did that, like, I said, you know what, this next couple of years, I'm riding with you. I actually moved to, just south of Fort Lauderdale. So it makes it an easy ride for me to get to where she's at and train with her every day. So, we're going to go on this little ride together to see how far she could take it.
Last thing, you mentioned the Goat Shed. What was Friday night like for you? You're sitting there watching highlights, you're probably on social media, and you're seeing President Awesome choking men out in the middle of the crowdy combat mat. What's going on in your mind, man?
Well, here's how I saw it, man. Friday night, after weigh-ins, we go to Jillian's room and we do a film study. And before we did film study, they was like, Dean, you got to see this. And I was like, what? I said, just watch. And then they pull up the video of Awesome choking this guy out. And I'm like, oh my God. and then the crowd's like, awesome. And I'm like, karate combat is the new Jerry Springer. I mean, it really is such great entertainment. I'm a little upset that I didn't get to go and work this time, but I'll be there in July.
There you go. Yeah, it's fun stuff. I'm going to be talking to President Awesome later on this week. Very excited for that. Thank you for helping me out with that, Dean, as well. And thank you for jumping on here to recap a wild UFC 303. Now it's on to Manchester for UFC 304. I mean, we got to go to Denver in the world's most famous Apex, and then we go to Manchester. But Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blades, Leon Edwards, Bilal Muhammad too should be a fun one. Appreciate you as always, Dean.
All right, but man, you take it easy. I'll catch up with you.